You're joining me here today on the banks of the River Wye at Hereford on the Hereford Angling Club Association stretch of the river at Belmont. We've actually decided to revisit the river today after I was fortunate enough to win the Wye Champs yesterday, about 100 yards upstream. Now, it was quite an unusual Wye Champs. The river rose really quickly, and what that meant, there was lots and lots of debris coming down the river, lots of leaves and bits of weed, and it made fishing for other fish really difficult, fishing for chub and barbel. Normally the match is won with weights between 50 and 100 pounds on what we call the out of town sections of the river. But yesterday, because the river rose really quickly, it gave me the opportunity to fish for bleak, which I did for most of the match, and I put together a weight of 52 pounds, which I believe is a record for this country. It's certainly a record for this stretch. And I believe I held the record before with a weight of 51 pounds further down the river at Ross. While bleak fishing is not everybody's cup of tea, it's a really important part of the match fishing here at Hereford, especially at this time of year. So why don't we go and have a look at the kit I'll be using. Okay, so bleak fishing on the Wye, well, bleak fishing anywhere really, means everything needs to be basic, and it means whip fishing. You're looking to catch large numbers of fish. I mean, on the Wye, you're looking to catch in excess of 1,000 fish to do any good really. I think in yesterday's Wye Champs I caught 1,560, so it means whip fishing, it means short whip fishing. I carry a range of these connoisseur whips from 2.5 metres up to 4 metres. Obviously the shorter you can catch, the quicker. That's not always necessarily going to get you the best weight. You do have to weigh up the difference between fishing further out and catching a larger stamp of bleak and fishing shorter, and potentially catching more fish but slightly smaller fish. So something which I've obviously done a lot of, and something which you can gain with experience. So the business end, the flick tip, the bit that does all the work, I attach the rig to basically a length of twizzled 12-pound tournament ST. Nice stiff line, perfect for this. So it sort of sits out as a little bit of a boom away from the tip, avoids you getting any tangles, and that's then just attached with a length of silicone there, again protruding from the pole to act as a bit of a boom, and then a piece of rubber there to stop it. And what I can actually do with this rig is sometimes you want to make very fine adjustments to get the line length right, and it does allow me to shorten or lengthen the rigs just ever so slightly to get the line length dead right. Rig wise, everything's really basic, just a very simple bleak floats, 0.16mm line, straightforward bulk of number 8s there, and down to a 3 or 4 inch hook length to a size 16 bleak hook. So nothing fancy. Let's have a fish and see what's out there, and I can run you through exactly how I do it. There's always a temptation, because of the numbers of fish required, to thrash the water to a foam, but it's not actually the way to get a big weight. The way is just nice, consistent, simple movements that you can maintain for the full 5 hours. Just keeping going for the 5 hours, this sort of fishing is one of the most challenging aspects of it. There's a few there at the minute, but they're not absolutely solid. But hopefully, shortly, we'll get into a really good rhythm. You can see by unhooking by hand, keeps everything nice and smooth. There's a very small side strike and then lift up, because what that allows me to do is leave the rig in the water if I miss a bite. So it means I don't have to bring the rig back out and go back in again. I can simply just let it go again. So tiny little side strike. If there's a fish on, I swing it out, and if there's not, then I just allow it to run again. Right, bait wise, couldn't be more simple when we bleak fishing. We've got maggots. Maybe if you were fishing a harder venue like the Thames, for example, you might have pinkies. We've then got sloppy ground bait. Now on the Wye I use a very heavy slop. I'm using Advantage River today, and what that allows is, because the Wye is quite a pacey river, the ball goes in, leaves a small cloud and draws the fish up and into the cloud. Now what we avoid on the Wye is feeding a lightweight cloud like you would on a lot of slower, clearer venues. The simple reason is if you put in a very lightweight cloud on the Wye, you'll literally just take the fish out of your peg. So that's a definite no-no on a river like this. The only other bait I feed, which might seem a bit odd, is hemp. And the simple reason again is for noise. What it does, again, if the fish have drifted off, they tend to come to noise. So by feeding hemp, it often brings in more fish, and also often brings in the bigger bleak, which, as I say, can quite often sit further out in the river. Right, so one of the most important tips when you're bleak fishing is how you hook your bait. You simply thread your maggot onto the hook, almost like you would a caster, hook through the blunt end, push the maggot round the bend of the hook up onto the shank. Now hopefully on that maggot you can catch 20 to 40 fish before you have to change. Obviously the longer you can go the better, but there does become a point where there's so little bait left that you obviously start missing bites, and that's when you change your bait. We talked about the bait we use earlier. We need to talk about how we actually feed it. So I always feed it about 1 metre below me. That allows me to fish above it, in it and below it. And it's key when you're fishing for these bleak to move around the peg, but only feed in one spot. You'll find that at periods in the match the fish will be sat above your feed. Sometimes they'll be sat right down at the bottom of your peg, and say by keep the feed going in one spot but search around with the whip. What you don't want to do is if a fish have moved down the peg, you don't want to be running the rig to them. So you need to, as soon as you don't get a bite there, you look down there. If you don't get one there, look above the feed. You can quite often catch little spells of maybe 10, 15, 20 big bleak above your feed. And again, that's what can set you apart at the end of the day. So feeding wise, little and often, 6, 8, 10 maggots each time. Which might not sound like many, but if you do that a few thousand times in 5 hours, it's amazing how you can easily get through a gallon of loose feed. In fact, yesterday I think I fed about 10 pints. Here's another little tip for you. Now I see lots of anglers who don't do this, but trust me, it's worth it. Black your float off. There's lots of floats on the market with various different colours, and if it's red and you get any number of fish in your peg, they'll attack your float, and it can become quite hard to read what is a bite and what is actually the fish trying to eat your float. So we've had a great few hours bleaking. You can see the rewards of a very simple method. Certainly something obviously I've perfected over the years, but there's lots of anglers now who taking up the opportunity to put together bleak weights on our local circuit. If you're certainly down this way, why not come and give it a go?